Must be high vibrational. It's taking off. So my talk, as I said today, is about presence. And it takes me back to one of my earliest memories as a child, maybe 3 or 4 years of age. And I'm sitting in the kitchen at the end of the big table. And I'm looking over at my dad, who is reading the newspaper.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking to myself, boy, I wish I could have that attention that he has for the newspaper. I wish I had that sense of oneness and connection. And I think that's just one of the most foundational experiences, perhaps, that we look for, is the sense of connection and of unity with others and with the divine. And there's a term, the perennial spirituality, and it refers to 4 realizations. And the first is that there is only one reality. Call it whatever you will among the names that we use: God, Divine Mother, Divine Father, Source, One Presence, Tao, Allah, Brahman, Great Spirit. And that is the source and the substance of all creation. That's the first principle of the perennial spirituality. And the second is that while each of us is a manifestation of this reality, most of us identify with something much smaller than that. Our culturally conditioned personality and individual ego that has a name that we respond to. And the third is that this identification with the smaller self gives rise to needless anxiety, unnecessary suffering, separation, and cross-cultural competition and violence even. And the fourth principle is that peace, compassion, and justice naturally replace the anxiety, the needless suffering, the competition, and the violence when we realize our true nature as a manifestation of this singular reality. And we realize that it is also the nature of everybody else. So there's no reason for competition and for violence. When we are able to be in touch with this source and presence within ourselves, we are able to see it also in everybody else. And our moral compass then is to build a world that works for all, not just for ourselves. And the great mystics and sages of every civilization throughout human history they've taught these 4 principles in their own way, in their own language, in their own time and culture. And unity teaches really the perennial spirituality today in our time. One of the great current writers, philosophers, Ken Wilber, describes it as a level of consciousness that we come to, having started out at the ground level of egocentric consciousness. And from there we move up to an expanded consciousness, ethnocentric, our group, however we want to think about that. And then to the next level, expanding again to what he calls universal, or the interest of all people. And finally, what he says is the cosmic level of consciousness, where we have an interest in all sentient being, in all life, from rocks to minerals to, who knows, out there in the galaxy, aliens, planets, etc., ad infinitum. But we have an openness to see our connection to it all. And this level of awareness recognizes the infinite God presence in the infinite, in every speck of creation. It's a holographic view of life in the universe. And the word universe literally means one song. of a poem. So we're all singing from the same hymn sheet, you could say. It's one song, if we can open up to that. Meister Eckhart, wonderful Christian mystic from the 1200s, once wrote, "The eye with which I see God is the same eye with which God sees me." Why don't we put up that first PowerPoint? That's not as clear as I thought it would be, but it's actually, it's like the pupil of an eye. Does anybody know what this is? So let me close the blind over here for a second. This one?
Better.
Yeah. It's the universe in an eyeball. And then the next slide.
Wow.
There we are, the universe inside of us. What we are talking about here is oneness consciousness, which can be described as seeing everything and everyone from the presence of the infinite through our minds and our eyes. And when I realize that the experience I am having is the divine having this experience, then I understand and I grok unity consciousness. And I am having an experience of oneness. Let's see what our next slide. Okay, this is the one. Can you see how that looks like a pupil? Okay. This is actually an artistic rendering of the universe based on science. It's sort of like all of the measurements that they can come up with, and this is what they think it looks like if we could step outside of it. It actually would look like a pupil. Now, again, we talk about everything being holographic, so there is a certain sense in which that probably is true. It's not maybe such a big thing as we might make it. So it's just one organism, all of it, the whole universe. Next slide. Okay, that's just another representation again of how we can open our understanding of ourselves to realize that we're not this self-contained boundary thing. You know, we're interacting. There's a semi-permeable membrane that we're at all times interacting with this environment around us. And if I could use an example from the recent headlines in the news, for a moment, let's recall the images of the immigrant children held in cages. The reason why this is so egregious and abhorrent is not just that it's inhuman, that we're not seeing the human, but that it is indivine. That's a made-up word. But you see what I'm getting at. We say something is inhuman. Well, it's indivine because the mistreatment of others is not seeing the divine in them. That's what makes it so egregious. We talk so much in this country about inalienable rights as humans, but where do those rights come from, or what are they based upon? It's based upon the fact that we are divine beings. It's based on the essential truth of our beingness, our divinity. Our behavior and our moral code then stems from and reflects that state of being which is unchanging. We are always the divine presence. And for those rights to be based on our humanity alone is to let ourselves be prone to the whims of who or what we consider a human to be at any given time. It can change. Color of the skin, abilities. It's just subject to whoever's making the rules up. But we need our rights based on our divinity. Because no matter then how I might behave or how others behave, I will be conscious of mine and others through divine nature, which tempers any righteous judgment I might be prone to. Our behavior is but the unstable wave motion on the surface of the ocean, and we mustn't let it blind us to the consistent ocean that lies beneath. Our behavior can distract us. It's a little wave, but what about the ocean that I am underneath that? On the other hand, we do not participate in our divine nature by pretending that everything that we do is good or godly. We do need to be honest and acknowledge when our behavior or thinking isn't matching our divine nature. It isn't okay to say, God made me just the way I am, so don't mess with me. This is a divine masterpiece, and He made it just the way it is. That's a cop-out. Or listen to me because I am the divine speaking. Or Jesus said, I am God, so there. It reminds me of the story of a patient who went to see his doctor, and he said to the doctor, Doctor, I keep thinking that I'm God. So the doctor said to him, so when did this all start? And he said, well, it all started when I created the sun and the earth. We might surmise that it is best not to say that I am God, or to wear a t-shirt with that emblazoned on it, which sounds kind of grandiose and causes people to react negatively perhaps, or it might even get you locked out. Better to say that the infinite divine lives in me, as me, through me, in my finite humanness. That gives a fuller picture of this relationship, and it allows for a more accurate and realistic depiction of who I am and of how people encounter me. And it leaves open the question of how I presence myself and the divine in this human body at any given time. How do I mindfully embody both my humanness and my divinity? How does the universe of infinite intelligence live within me and express through me? And how does it relate to everything? Well, the answer is simple in one way. It relates to everything as itself. And that's the invitation that it gives us. God, Source, infinite consciousness, is present within these finite bodies as us in the form of vast, spacious, transcendent awareness. And this is a point that we don't often make enough. Like when we try to feel into what God or the divine is, we're limiting it to our little puny consciousness. We have to have an opening there for the majesty, for the vastness, the infinity, for that to somehow show up in us and for us to be able to feel into that. And as we experience the present moment, we do so not only as the personality that we are, the unique flavor that we express, whether it's mocha chocolate or vanilla. Each one of us is just like a flavor. But in addition to that, we experience the infinite, eternal, omniscient, and all-knowing consciousness that is within us. Or at least, that is in theory what we are invited to experience. So we're going to take a pause for an ad. Are you tired of your small-minded, limited understanding of life, of humanity, of the world, of politics, or of your ego personality?
Yes.
9 out of 10 spiritual leaders recommend a daily dose of unity consciousness, daily mindfulness, and divine expansiveness. Ask your spiritual guide if unity consciousness is right for you. So how do we experience oneness or unity consciousness? The simple answer is one moment at a time, and we do it mindfully. We do it by being mindful that there is a contracted me and an expanded I, both experiencing this moment. The me says, I'm paying attention, sort of, but I have all sorts of things distracting me, my mind is full of thoughts, my feelings are all over the place, and I'm having all sorts of experiences with people. The I says, I am here as an infinite being, aware of my eternality, even while experiencing time and space. I am here with access to information and understanding beyond my limited mind. The me I experience is like a software program that has been corrupted and has some erroneous information on it which is ruining my filter of life. The I that I am is like the hard drive that has this much greater capacity and resources available to it, and it's understanding the bigger picture of things. It understands that I am far greater than my thoughts and feelings. Don't believe everything you think. Good bumper sticker. I start to notice that I can know myself as a higher consciousness if I still myself, still those thoughts, still those feelings, and just open in the silence. I can see that I'm far greater than the sum of my human mind's thinking about itself. And I can go beyond and deeper than those kind of finite definitions. So we can leave behind all identification with forms, begin to sense the formless being that we are. We too are the formless being, even while being in form. And it's available to us in the stillness, in the emptiness, which opens to us when our minds are still and our emotions are calm. And this is when we start to feel fullness, a joy, maybe even a bliss about life in our hearts, when they're connected to the source, when that childhood desire to be connected is fulfilled. That's when we start to feel peace. In the stillness, in the fullness, in that ocean of love, in our unity with the divine, where God's Spirit gives witness to our spirit that we are one and the same. Our scripture says we are children of God, extensions, offsprings. But it is the infinite divine presence, witnessing and recognizing the infinite in us as itself. And that's also a very important point. It's not just my ego mind doing this. It is the infinite divine presence witnessing and recognizing the divine in us as itself. So it's the divine recognizing the divine. It's not just me and my humanness recognizing the divine. See, that's a whole other layer that's there in the basement for us. That is true oneness and unity consciousness. Seeing everything and everyone from the presence of the infinite, or as Eckhart Tolle said, the eye with which I see God is the same eye with which God sees us. And that's what we call having the mind in us that was in Christ Jesus. Then we look from the mind of the cosmic Christ, or Ken Wilber's fourth level of awareness, and we see all of reality without separation, experienced within us, as seeing everything and everyone in seamless unity. It's seeing all realms of reality without separation in the non-dual consciousness that Jesus called the kingdom of heaven. It's right here, folks. We're in it. We're swimming in it, in oneness, and yet we're looking around for it. Paul says, I live, not I, but Christ lives in me. It's that consciousness of oneness. That's what really the Christ mind is. And since Christ is the symbol for all of reality, this means we drop identity with the one thing, the one body, the one journey, the one story, the one reality and identity, and we shift and open to identification with it all. How else could we experience unity consciousness? It has to be with all. And so we must feel connected to everything and everyone, one with all. And our approach to life has to be then to build a world that works for all. You can't have unity consciousness without working on behalf of everybody and including everybody. Anything less doesn't work. And that requires being present to one and all in every moment, with an attitude, of course, of openness, receptivity, and love. And that is the perennial spirituality of the ages. And we have been privileged as members of Unity or of part of this movement to be the ones who hold that energy and consciousness in today's world. So let us go within for our meditation. Let us connect once again with that presence. We do this on behalf of all people. It's like we bring to mind all people across the world. And we know and acknowledge for humanity that we are one and the same. There is only one great being on this planet. And as I give witness to this, I am aligning to the truth, capital T, truth of our being. And as we do so, the Creator is seeing through us and knowing as us and in us. And as we leave behind all those things that we have been taught that have kept us in separation, we lift all that we see before us, all humanity, this planet, to the vibration of the divine, to a manifestation of truth here and now. And we know who we are. I know who I am. I know what I am. And we know how to serve in love for the good of all. So be it. Thank you, God.